Good evening, good evening. We are here this evening to do what we normally do. I just to let you guys know, um, this platform is a non-political platform. It have no intent or purpose to discriminate or to embarrass the government in any way, shape, or form. We're just here to discuss the issues of our concern as Jamaicans, and we will try to, with the best of our ability, to find solution to the problems that we are about to discuss. I'm going to ask you guys to just like and share this podcast. If you're not so in love with it, please don't give me a thumbs down because sometimes it slows down the movements of the show. So, with that being said, I'm gonna. I should let you guys know too that tonight we should have Renita Adams on the show, which was scheduled, but because of some issues, he's not here tonight. But we will reschedule him for another time. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the people that we're working with, our panelists. We have Lion, we have Dr. Paul Ivy, and of course David Brown and Ronnie Sutherland. We are still waiting for Mr. Rattigan. Oh, he is actually here. Good evening, Sir Rattigan. How you doing, sir? Are, are you hearing us?
Mic check. One, two, three. Yeah, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for stopping by. How you
Running,
doing?
my virgin. What I say?
There, man.
Big up yourself.
All
Mr.
right, all
Brown, good
right.
night, sir. Mr.
Well,
Yeah,
Ivy, good night. Lion, see you, sir.
blessings, blessings,
See you,
blessings, and
sir.
well,
blessings.
See you, sir. See him, sir,
I
brother.
just want to,
Greetings,
I just want
greetings,
to
Mr.
say,
Rotherham.
Yes.
I usually say this at the end of the show, but I'm gonna say this now that we know we have we all Jamaicans and we have a common interest. It's just that we have different views and opinion. I'm just asking you all. I'm suspecting that people might strong in their position, but just be respectful of each other. That's the only thing. I will give you guys each question. I'm gonna give you guys at least 2.5 minutes to answer so that everybody get a fair share. But before I get into the show, I'm going to read something here that I put together. Growing up in Jamaica, the country always have a lack in let me start all over again because the screen is just a little bit too small for me. Growing up in Jamaica, the country has always has been lack in intense fight against crime as long as I can remember. For 18 years, between 1974 and 1992, the country was under what was known as Suppression of Crime Act. I don't know if you guys remember that. Some of you are a little too young. Dr. Paul Ivy probably don't remember. The Suppression of Crime, Suppression of Crime Act gave the police and military increased power to search, detain, and arrest individuals to curb crime activities. It was a period that saw many instances of police exercise leading to human rights abuse. Since the repeal of the Suspicion of Crime Act, the country has been in and out of state of emergency (SOEs), which have similar features to the Suppression of Crime Act. In that, the SOEs allow the arbitrary detainment of citizens. Even with that, the crime monster continues. Tonight, we would like to try to find answers to the burning question, which is what is impeding the fight against crime. For us to solve the problem, we need to find the problem. I hope you guys agree. Good evening, sirs. I'm going to start with my first question, and I'm going to give you guys at least 2 minutes to answer. And I'm going to start from the lower right of me. All right, so let me start with my question. What is the biggest tragic move that what is the biggest strategic move that the government can make in fight against crime? David Brown, could you answer the question, please?
Good evening, everyone. Attorney Rattigan, good evening.
Yes,
Mr.
sir. Good
Sutherland,
evening.
good evening. Mr. Lyon, good evening.
Yes,
And
blessings.
last but not least, Dr. Ivy, good evening. Great to see you again.
Greetings, Sir Brown. Good to be with you again.
All right. My response to that question is really the essence of my presence on this podcast. And it requires a more comprehensive response. I will, however, provide a brief synopsis, which I sort of had drafted in anticipation of an opportunity to present this position. And I read as follows. The annual number of murders in 2022 was 1,511. The annual number in 2023 was 1,393. There was a 7.8% decrease in murders in 2023 and a decrease in other violent crimes. It is my view that the JCF is currently working very diligently to reduce violent crimes. After the local government election this month, I will invite to this podcast, if possible, a former JCF member who is one of Jamaica's best crime fighters to have a discussion on reducing Jamaica's violent crimes.
Wow. All right, thank you for that, sir. Lion, I'm going to pick on you because I'm not hearing your voice in the test. I want to hear. What is the biggest strategic move that the government can make to fight against crime?
Well, good evening. Blessings to the entire panel and our blessed host. We garner all the respect for the platform that you are providing right now. The question has a simple answer for me, really. It will not last 2 minutes because I think the best strategic move that the government could do is to excuse itself from Parliament.
Wow. That's the answer?
As far as it is.
Wow. All right. That's a parallel. Let me throw the same question at you, sir.
Gentlemen, it's good to be with you, this August group that I find myself in. I don't think there is one strategic action that the government can take to solve crime. I appreciate the question, how it is put, to say, okay, what is something that can be done that will give the greatest impact? But having regard to the fact that the crime is multifaceted, having many dimensions, you're not going to find a panacea or a silver bullet, as it were. But it seems to me that in terms of opening up the discussion, the view that I will take is this. Philosophically, the primary purpose governments are instituted among people is the maintenance of law and order. So I'm arguing that the government must accept that responsibility as its primary purpose for being in existence. And moving from that, then any operational or tactical issues that can be taken will flow from it. But the government cannot be in office and abdicate its responsibility to maintain law and order. It is part of the social contract. As Thomas Hobbes argued, that if we don't have law and order, liberal democracies are predicated on law and order. And without law and order, we're going to have a situation where life is short and brutish, and just lawlessness permeates the entire society. So, job number one for government, maintain law and order, and that they must accept that as their primary responsibility. And I think that can be the starting point.
Great answer. Thank you, sir. I'm going to pick on the man who came in last. That is Mr. Rattigan.
Yes. Again, good evening to everyone. Respect. The question: what is a strategic move that the government can take to address crime?
Yes.
Very, very, very simple. Very simple. And I won't address. I'll address what David said earlier, but I agree with Dr. Ivy about protecting your people through law and order. And if you recall, the motto of the JCF is protect, serve, or serve, protect, and reassure. All right. So the question is, how should they do that? Because they're not doing that. Two things I'll mention to you: Plan Secure Jamaica, consensus on crime, consensus monitoring on crime. Those are two strategies that the government came up with in 2016 and 2020, and they claimed that this was going to be the panacea. In fact, Plan Secure Jamaica was the initiative that caused the government to say you can sleep with your door, or you will be able to sleep with your door and your windows open. That was Plan Secure, and that's a cascade from the National Security Plan. And I urge everyone who hasn't read it to go and look at that document. I think it's almost close to like 100 pages. But read the National Security Plan and then go and read Plan Secure Jamaica. Those two plans, if the government would implement them, crime would be under control. You can never eliminate crime. That's far-fetched. That's utopia. But you can control crime. And I've seen crime control in my service with the FBI throughout this world. Again, answer to your question: Plan Secure Jamaica, consensus monitoring on crime.
Mr. Rand, you want to answer the question for me, sir?
Well, it's a very broad question, and I know you're asking for a strategic response, so whatever the answer is in 2 minutes will require some development. But I couldn't agree with Dr. Ivy more that the strategic matter at hand has to do with accepting that citizen safety is the job number one of a government. That's why government come into being, So he's making the point that we must make citizen safety priority number one. Now, that is where the issue starts. What does that mean? It means, therefore, that given all the responsibility that government has, citizen safety must take priority. Now, that is not the mindset of our government at the moment. Has not been the mindset since independence, where citizen safety is seen as the priority. What does that mean? It means that before we look about educating people, before we look at providing health care for people, before we look at public infrastructure, citizen safety must be in place. That's what priority means. That's what job number one means. The great Albert Einstein, probably one of the brightest minds that ever lived, he said that a problem cannot be solved at the level or the mindset at which a problem was created. So what we have now is a mindset since independence that has created the crime monster that we have. So if we were to follow Albert Einstein, that is the mindset that has to be changed. And that mindset will be in line with what Dr. Ivy said, that we must get up and see law and order, our security safety as job number one. It's no little tactical move and so on and so forth. It's about accepting that. Now, that is where the political issues come about, because the conservative have a view of that, and the liberals have a view of that as to what that means. So that, I think, would be the framework within which I could take my
So, so you're saying that that we've been like that ever since independence, but Lion is saying that a change of government will take care of that. That could you go ahead?
If I can reiterate and redeem some more of the minutes that I stored up for just now. Based on what I'm hearing across the panel just now, right? And just coming off what Brother Sutherland was just mentioning, serves to confirm what Brother David and Dr. Ivy were saying. The plans exist. The problem is they are not implemented. So you have a systemic problem. And I dare say it went before 1962. Let's go back to 1944. I think Einstein is agreeing with what I just said a while ago when I said the remedy or the strategic move that could be made is for the government to excuse itself from Parliament. Because there's no way that the problem can be solved with the mongoose in the hen house. We have a problem in the hen house. Einstein said it can't be solved like that. The mongoose have to be out of the hen house. You don't care what kind of programs they put in and plans. That is not, Jamaica does not lack intellectual capabilities. The parliamentarians, even though, as I keep repeating after it was reiterated, that a collection of baboons is called a parliament. But irrespective of that, we have an obligation not to be tinkering around different programs and policies. That's not the problem. We are awash with skill to the extent that it's flooding abroad and you're having a brain drain. The problem is that there is no will to effect these plans, no matter how grandiose they are, because there's an intent to maintain the slavery that we were supposed to have been emancipated from under the guise of a two-party garrison political system. What is the solution? That system must go.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Anybody want to respond to what Lion has just said? I guess
I would. I don't agree with a word he said. I think to get up after 60 odd years of independence to say the parliament must go, that in itself doesn't present an answer to the question about what's impeding it. It can't be our parliamentarians that's impeding it, because we have a political system that's based on democracy. The people who are in parliament are there because they were voted into parliament. You know, if we are saying that we need to change the system that resulted in a parliament, that's an entirely different thing. But whatever the solution that we have, it has to take place within the context of a democracy. It's the same. We have a different kind of problem because, you know, for example, I know that Dr. Ivy has an idea about a view about state of emergency, and I can't agree with him more, even though I am a lot more pliable or tolerant of the fact that state of emergency do result in the abuse of people's rights. And so his argument would be that whatever we're going to go about solving problem has to take place in the context of human rights. So there's no solution to just simply rejecting our political or democratic system. It can't be. You can't just say parliamentarian must go out and leave and go. That is not a solution that's available to us. We have to be a little bit more respectful of the people who put people in parliament. That's the system.
Mr. Rattigan, I saw you smile. You have anything to say about what Lion had said?
Well, Lion said, well, there is some merit to what Lion has said. And here's how I view it. He's saying that you need to get rid of the system. And to some degree, we are taking steps to rid ourselves of the shackles of plantocracy and the system we inherited from the British. That's why they have the Constitutional Commission going around right now, trying to make changes to it, to implement a different system. That system would call for the separation from the monarch or the monarchy, meaning that the governor general would no longer be relevant to us. And so now they're trying to decide, okay, what are we going to have? We're going to have an executive president or a president who's just there in name. So they're still, I think they've realized what Lion has said. And so they're taking steps right now to address some of those issues. Will those steps be enough? We don't know. But the one thing we do know is that if we follow what they're saying, by the time they're finished, the system as we know it today won't be that system when they're completed, when they're finished with their project. So from that standpoint, it seems to me as if the Lion is onto something, because the government says, no, we don't want the monarch. We don't want any affiliation with the monarchy. We don't want the governor general. The problem now with that is, okay, the governor general has a vast amount of power. In fact, I did a presentation on who's the real bro god, and I went through the Constitution and showed the public that the governor general and the king, they are the real bro gods. But now the thing is, okay, you're gonna take away all that power, and where are you gonna put all of that power? Because all of that power is vested in one person right now. So where are you going to do with it? And some will, some people, and they're upset with me, they've offered the solution that they should invest all of those powers in a president. And I said, no, you can't put all of that. You can't give so much control and power to one person. We already have it. We don't need it. So Lion is onto something.
But in fairness, Bill, that is not what he said. And that's not what he said. He's not talking about changing from a Republican state to from a monarchical setup to one of a republic. He's not saying that. He's saying we must get rid of the parliamentarians. And I'm saying whether we have a parliament, a monarchical arrangement as we have now, or we move to a republican arrangement where we now becomes a republic, we are going to have parliamentarians.
Well, Ronnie, let me just say one quick thing.
So the point you're making is that is not the point he made.
No, hold on.
Let's not make an independent point to support another point.
Hold on a second. One quick thing. Did you ask him what he meant by that?
I don't know what he meant. You don't said. I said.
No. Just because somebody says something doesn't necessarily mean that what you're hearing and you're perceiving is what they meant. Ask him. He's right there. Ask him.
He said we must get rid of the parliamentarians. They must
listen. If you're going to speak like that, you must be accurate.
No, accidentally, he is gone. I don't know what happened. He's gonna come back in, I hope. Dr. Paul Ivy, Mr. Brown,
yes,
you guys don't want to weigh in on that?
I want to weigh in on it from the standpoint of I wouldn't put the matter in using the form of words that Lion used. What I think he well, let me say this, that I don't know what he's thinking, and I won't say what I think somebody's thinking. Let me put my perspective on it. I think it is to be appreciated that there has been, over the years, a link between the politics and crime. There's a nexus between the politics and crime. Because, for example, just on the face of it, or to cite a specific example, we've often heard that there are two major criminal gangs in Spanish Town. One is aligned to the PNP, one is aligned to the JLP. We've heard that, you hear the names of the gangs are mentioned, and in the same breath, you hear that the one is aligned to this party and the other is aligned to the party. That has been the case. In Professor Anthony Harriot's book, Policy Options for Crime in Jamaica, he makes the point that the crime situation cannot be fully understood without reference to politics. So I think from that standpoint, we have known about the garrison infrastructure and those kind of things. So there's that link. And so part of the solution has to be the ushering in of a new dispensation where we sever that umbilical link between the politics and the crime. I have as one of the points that I wanted to make, and Sir Rattigan made the point. On August 3rd, 2020, the stakeholders from private sector and the government, they went to the Jamaica Conference Center and they signed the consensus on crime. I was driving into Kingston the day when it was happening, and I was listening keenly because I said to myself, we have reached a point now where the critical stakeholders, private sector, government, and opposition, they met, and there was this consensus on crime that was signed at the Jamaica Conference Center. Targets were set. Lloyd Distant from the Chamber of Commerce was the chair of it, and the particular targets are set out in there. From time to time, when Lloyd Distant gives an update, you hear of the targets being missed. So you ask yourself the question, where is the will? Where is the will? The other point I want to make as it relates to the consensus on crime is that the model that was used was said to be modeled off EPOC, when we had that IMF agreement and the Economic Oversight Committee was put in place. And it was felt that that arrangement led to good outcomes. So as a derivative from the consensus on crime, they had CMOC, Crime Monitoring Oversight Committee, that Lloyd Distant chaired. And so we have to, in relation to the point about politics, we have to ask ourselves the question, is there the will at the political level?
Well, great answer. Let me just move to the next question because we have.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
The line is back, It would be good if he speaks for himself to clarify what he was saying. That was what was on the table before he left.
Yeah, Mr. Lyon, you can just define what you meant with this statement there.
Let me put some of the fears that are obviously being expressed.
I give you 2 minutes, sir.
Let me put some of those fears to rest, because a lot of time when people hear this discussion that the entire system has to go, they start panicking and start thinking about violent revolution and everything that is anarchy. It doesn't matter if it's anarchy or it's anarchy. We have nothing to do with that. Now let us get back to the meat of the matter, right? One example. The Magnitsky Act. When that is applied to the Jamaican situation, do you think it's only the JLP that is going to come under scrutiny? Do you think it's only this government or this last 5 years that is going to come under scrutiny? Here's the questions I have to ask my August brethren. In the event that the Magnitsky Act identifies persons in the hierarchy of both the JLP and the PNP, and the government is now in a crisis, do you think that the world would end? I dare say no. This is something that you have to think about seriously, because we are under a regime of corruption that is so systemic that even those with good consciences have now begun to rot and trying to intellectualize themselves away while they line their personal pockets, and people's blood are shedding daily. We must be serious as a set of people and be responsible, because we are standing, as I hear my good brother Ratigan say all the while, on the shoulders of those who have sacrificed before, for us to be playing an intellectual gymnasium, knowing very well that the elephant in the room is a system that we were not just inherited, we were scammed into receiving as independence.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody want to jump on that? Do you think you define to us what you meant by get rid of the parliament?
I just defined it with an example. A while ago. In the event that the Magnitsky Act.
Okay, sir. All right, can we move on?
Let me just say something about this Magnitsky Act.
Yeah.
Because I hear Lan parroting Mr. Rattigan's position of his last time. We in Jamaica, we are not looking to the American government to straighten out our government. Just about 2 weeks ago, a big case in Trinidad with a man down there who was head of CONCACAF football.
No, hold on. Let me hear you. Sorry. Let me hear you. No, hold on. Let me hear you. I'm going to let you finish. I want you to know.
I'm going to lose.
I'm going to let you finish. I just want you to know. Magnitsky Act is for the US, Canada, England, and the EU. It's not just you.
So let me finish. So we in Jamaica, we are not sitting here waiting for any foreign government to straighten out our politicians, our parliamentarians. That's what there's a thing called sovereignty, and we believe in it. Just about 2 weeks ago, the gentleman who was head of CONCACAF, who was cited to be in some big bribery and thing with FIFA, and America demand that him be taken to America because he broke some law and everything. Want to lock him up. The Supreme Court in America look at the government there and say, let me tell you something. We must stop it. You're overreaching. And that gentleman now is now free to stay. And luckily, the Trinidadians never pack him up and put him in a plane and send him off to America by some extradition order. So we have to have some principle on which we have these kind of conversations. Because just get up and who's going to extradite people from Jamaica? You know, because America, they're going to come down with a plane and grab people and run away with them. We have to stop this foolishness, man. All of these things must happen within the context and their principles. One of them is our sovereign principle, sovereignty. Nobody going to pack up anybody and send them away. So let us stop it.
Let me make a quick comment on that. Ronnie, I don't think you're familiar with the Magnitsky Act, because the Magnitsky Act doesn't call for extradition. It does not. The gentleman down in CONCACAF, that's a different law completely. That it's not the Magnitsky. The Magnitsky calls for three things. Designation.
I'm talking about the idea of overreaching.
All right, fine. So you'll agree with me then that the Magnitsky Act is not the act that that
No,
they
no,
tried to.
I totally
Okay.
agree. I totally
All right.
agree.
So now here's a question for you. Ronnie. You made up great. You want to cry the last time about sovereignty, and you're doing it again today. So I ask you this: you admitted the last time we met, you said there is corruption in Jamaica. Right?
Lots of corruption.
Now you're saying we don't need anybody from outside to come and straighten up our thing. We'll say, please tell us, how do you foresee Jamaica handling the systemic corruption problem?
Yeah. So it is ours to solve. It is not for some foreign power, because we do have a thing called sovereignty. And it's either we agree with it as a principle or we don't agree with it as a principle. That some foreign force is going to come and straighten up our situation in Jamaica. That we're not going to rely on.
What about when Jamaica does it?
So that's a principle.
When Jamaica does it and send persons to Haiti, what you say about that?
And then what?
When Jamaica is up to send an army to Haiti, what you say about that? Other people's sovereignty.
The army to Haiti to go arrest anybody.
No, police. Don't
regime. They're not sending them to change regime. It's an entirely different. I am not saying that we can't have peacekeeping forces around the world. We are part of the UN. I'm just simply saying this thing. You have to go back to what you said, my brother, about get rid of the parliamentarians. And
no, you said that. You are the only one that.
Dennis, hold on 1 second, Dr. Ivy. Dennis, this I'm a practicing attorney, and I almost feel like you're the judge, and I want to say to you, Judge, please force the witness to answer the question, because I asked him a question. The question is, please tell us, since you don't want no foreign intervention to deal with the problem, please tell us, all of us Jamaicans, what is your solution to deal with the systemic problem of corruption in Jamaica? You notice what his answer was. We don't need anybody to come in and tell us. We don't. It still hasn't. So I'm asking you, Dennis, please direct the witness.
Okay. If you allow me all night to do it, because that is a question that cannot be answered in a sentence. So I started out by saying that we have a problem. We have a problem in Jamaica. We have a problem in Jamaica with corruption. You have it in America too. We have a problem in Jamaica with crime and violence. You have it in just this eve today in America, in Boston. There were a shooting, at the celebration for the football people, and 22 people were shot, 1 killed. We have a problem all around the world. I don't have the solution to Jamaica's crime problem. So if you're asking me for that, my brother, I don't have it. I have said it in very, very clear terms that. Right. Let me just tell you, but I'm finished. I've said in very clear terms that the problem that we have now in crime relates to the mindset that we have had since independence. Now, your question to me should be, what is that mindset? What is that mindset? That mindset, we have had a very liberal approach to crime in Jamaica, where we change from what was happening before independence. The colonial people had a very, what we call a conservative approach to crime, where they took the view that any crime that is committed will be punished, and that they'll punish it severely because they want the punishment to be a deterrent. When we took it over, we immediately applied a liberal approach to dealing with the issue of crime. We moved from trying to create a deterrent setup to one that you know as a liberal approach to be one of prevention. And to do that, we say, okay, if people have somewhere to live, if people are educated, if people are employed, they will not commit crime. The problem that our brothers and sisters and our ancestors had in the 30s and 20s, well, because they didn't have jobs, they were not educated, they didn't have, so they had to be scrounging, they were marginalized. And so rather than continue with the enforcement of the law, we shift to the more liberal approach of trying to give them house, give them and everything. And we have not been able to do, so we have not been able to do that, but we ease up on enforcement.
Let me just say one quick thing, Dr. Ivy, but just to Dennis, please permit me. Just one thing, a housekeeping matter.
Yes,
Just no, less than a minute. A housekeeping matter. The caption of tonight's discussion is Jamaica crime solution. So I take umbrage when our brother Ronnie starts to make comparison with the United States. He did it the last time, and I asked him what was the homicide rate for the United States, and he said it was 7. And I asked him what was the homicide rate for Jamaica, and he said it was 51. And I said, I rest my case. If we're coming here to make comparisons, then I think I'm in the wrong program. If we're here to talk about the Jamaica crime solution and leave everybody else out, because that's my platform. Fix Jamaica. I don't care about the rest of the world. Fix Jamaica. Let's keep it right there.
So don't use you know what introduced my point to America? Your money scared.
You know why?
It is American. And
yes.
so if you keep that out of it, you'll never hear me mention a word.
No.
As soon as you put that as a solution, I'm telling you that the American government have more reason to be focused on America than to focus on Jamaica. That's all I'm saying.
Ronnie, here's why it came up, right? Because you don't have a solution to deal with the problem of corruption in Jamaica. The Magnitsky will deal with it. Magnitsky will deal with it.
In that regard, I wanted to come in to say this. That's the juncture at which I wanted to come in. Countries are governed, administered through effective and strong institutions. What we have seen over the years is that some of the institutions that we should rely on in Jamaica that are critical to the crime control issue, they have been weak and ineffective. And here's an example where Uncle Sam stepped in, Mr. Ronnie. We had a gentleman in a community, he was actually called the president. And the US issued an extradition order for him in 2020. The political directorate at the time sought to protect him. All type of shenanigans. And it didn't work. What is the simple point I'm making here? The simple point I'm making here is that where we have a situation as has been demonstrated in Jamaica, that the institutions and the powers that be are not strong enough, effective enough, or don't have the will to take the necessary actions, we may well find extradition requests being put in place, and the particular act that is being mentioned may well have to be invoked.
Let me tell you, since we're going to this president, there's an institution and an organization that allowed for the extradition of the president. We can spin any amount of political, gig that we want. But let me just say this. Prior to that president who, at the time, Bruce Golding was prime minister, and all of him trying to slow down the process and so on and so forth, I am old enough to know that the United States government, so we are part of this extradition setup, This is not something that the Americans just come and impose on us and grab somebody and go. We are part of it as part of our institutional arrangement. So nothing new, we have that. In the case of the president, the Dudos, and Bruce Golding, trying to slow down the process, I am old enough to know that there was an extradition of a Tivoli Gardens individual that was sent to America only to find that the Americans tricked the Jamaican government with him ending up there. It's after he got there that they realized. The people in Tivoli Gardens and Jamaica generally who are aware of that say they have to be very careful. So if you don't know the history of it, I don't want to call the gentleman's name, but everybody in here is supposed to know who that gentleman was. But
all of that is a fear deal, Sutherland. Running.
So let us not come here to make any political point about running. To ensure that the mistake that was made before was not made again.
No, running. we don't want to fool this thing with a lot of rhetorical speeches and things and condemn each other, right? Here's what we're saying. There is a consensus, right, that corruption is rife in the country. You also confess that you have no solution. This is the question to you. Are you adverse to using all legal means necessary in holding the government accountable?
Within the framework of the Jamaican law.
No, hold on. Unosh, you didn't hear me. I said all legal means necessary. Sometimes for human rights, you have to appeal to United Nations. You're going to say you're not going to go to United Nations to defend human rights? Come on, man. I don't understand the kind of logic you have.
I am saying I am prepared for us to use all legal means within the framework of the Jamaican legal system.
When the legal system is corrupt?
I don't agree with you that that's the extent of the problem we have now, you know.
All right. I'm going to tell you how. I bet you agree with you.
I don't agree with you. The magnitude at which you are putting it, I do not agree with that. I agree that Jamaica have corruption, but I don't believe it's time for the call Trump.
Calm down, man. Calm down, man. I bet you agree with me now. If you have a minister of justice, right? I bet you agree with me now. A minister of justice, right? Who has been identified as having criminal attachments and association. Do you have confidence that that institution can address crime?
What are you asking me? You're making up a case. But you're creating a case. I don't know.
Could you repeat your question, Mr. Lyon?
I don't know what you ask. Are you making up? You're making up.
Let's just give him an opportunity to ask a question one more time. Was that a question, sir?
He's saying if I have, I mean, a minister of justice. If I have one, I don't know. That can be a serious question in a forum like this.
Can I address this to any other members of the panel? If you want me to ask it over, I'll do it.
Yeah, just go ahead and ask it over and give the opportunity to the rest of the panel to respond.
Okay, the gist of the question is anyone here on the panel opposed to using all legal means necessary in holding the government accountable?
Dr. Paul, if you want to respond to that?
I would put it this way. Liberal democracies are predicated on the rule of law. The Constitution is the supreme law. So it is law, it should be a government of laws, not a government of men. All persons should be equal in front of the law, all persons. But that's not kind of like what we have had traditionally in Jamaica. We hear talk of the two Jamaicas and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, to the question, the rule of law must be supreme, and anybody who violates the law should be brought to book, regardless of whatever office they hold.
Okay. I think I get what you're saying right there. You want to weigh in on that, Attorney Brown?
Well, in my opening remarks, I limited myself to address the crime solution and defer to a future discussion because my focus is strictly on bringing down the high numbers of murders in Jamaica, which I know is possible. In the 80s, we had like the 400s, not over 500, right? And I don't know if we'll be having this type of discussion in the 80s. This is a bit diffuse. Individuals have the right to express their views and have the right to recommend solutions, whether they're within the framework of Jamaica's domestic law or to appeal to international law. That's a process that's at work globally. My focus is on the possibility and the reality of bringing down Jamaica's high annual murders ASAP. I'm not concerned with our discussion.
All right, let me just ask this other question, and so that we can move on. Is it politically feasible for the government come down hard on crime in Jamaica? I know we talk about what you call it, corruption and all that in Jamaica. So the question is it politically feasible for the government to come down hard on crime in Jamaica? You want to give that a shot?
If corruption is feasible, right? That means there is ongoing incentive to remain corrupt. Now, for them to change the system means that they're going to have to give up all of that sweets that they have been getting. And when you say all, it goes to the core. It has become part of the culture because it is rubber stamped from the head. And everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And it's not just now, it's not just one administration either. And if we keep pussyfooting around the problem, we can never address it seriously. Here we have a situation, right? We have a situation. And we know that the cause of the problem is that persons in hierarchy are also involved. Not involved. They are the one orchestrating it. The things that happen in Jamaica, 250 pipe bombs, no poor man does that.
So
even scamming.
So you're saying the government benefit from crime is that that's what you're alluding to, sir?
That's what you call illicit gain.
Wow. Let me hear from Dr. Paul Ivy if he support that.
What was the question again? The political is it political?
Is it politically feasible for the government to come down hard on crime in Jamaica?
What we have had successive generations, successive administrations, I should say, is expediency. They act out of political expediency rather than principle or what is for the greater good. It is always a case of what effect actions are going to have on the votes. If, for example, a set of people are, we have had instances where people occupy property illegally, squatters, informal settlements, and when they are to be removed, the votes are counted up and maneuverings are made to keep them there. It goes back to the earlier point made regarding CMOC and the consensus on crime. There are utterances made, lip services given, but when the rubber is supposed to hit the road, you don't have the will to take the actions. I cited the example last time, and I'm going to cite it again. Erskine Sandiford, a former Prime Minister of Barbados, took the necessary decisions to put his country on a good economic footing. We do not have statesmen in Jamaica who are going to make the kind of decisions that are going to have intergenerational benefits without looking necessarily at the political election cycle in order to make the decisions. And then you have the tentacles of crime are interwoven with the politics. And so if that is not dismantled, we are going to keep spinning our wheels without solving this problem. I give you another simple example. Political campaign is on the way now. Look at all the body protruding and the lawlessness that is pervading the political enterprise.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that. I asked a question as it relates to that, and because I was watching the some of the YouTube videos and see that lawlessness, people, a bus that carries 20 people have 50 people on it, and the way they conduct themselves in the presence of the police. And is it that they can't do nothing about it? I probably shouldn't ask the question because I did not want to move from the first question, but is it that they can't do nothing?
I was wanting to ask David a question which would probably segue into what you're doing right now. David, the question: do you think that the political parties are willing to give up garrisons, knowing that they are the incubators of crime and lawless behavior? Do you think they have that will to give up garrison communities?
In giving my
We're talking
opinion,
about crime.
pardon me?
Hmm?
No,
I said we're talking about crime and the reduction of murder rates. Yes.
right. In response to any question or giving my opinion, I'm very cautious in the sense that, like Mr. Rattigan, I'm a trained attorney, right? And
Yes.
I give opinion based upon my assessment of facts. I tend to, in this case, agree with you that that's a significant problem. And it's not anything that we are picking out of nowhere, because even the current prime minister said at some point that they're going to get rid of garrison, right? We know that political garrison is a big problem in Jamaica. You know, criminals are protected there. There's a system there, and it's hard to police these areas, whether it's, you know, a JLP garrison or a PNP garrison. And my stance on all this discussion with crime is that Jamaica needs to take away the politics from crime, or take away the crime from the politics, whether it's a overall of the governance system where you move from, you know, the Westminster model we have to, you know, a constitutional republic or whatever it is. But I'm even doubtful about that. It's not the system of government per se. It's the nature of the Jamaican people right now, from the parliament to the ghetto. We need a reset in Jamaica. We need to change Jamaica. Jamaica is way too corrupt. We know that. And it's not limited to the current government. The country on a whole is corrupt. So we have a collective responsibility. Can I finish, sir? We have a collective responsibility to listen to what each of us are saying together. We should be arguing among ourselves. Mr. Rattigan is coming from a place where he's trying to say, well, I can use this act, this rule of law, to sort of implement some order, to create some change, right? So I think that there's merit in what everybody is saying. Are we going to just end up be talking heads, and at the end of the day, nothing changes? So I agree what you're saying. Yes, the garrisons are a problem.
Yes. You know, as far as the garrisons are concerned, you know, we have to understand this and just call a spade a spade. There's nothing wrong with identifying the problem. Nothing wrong. We have been led to believe that you feel like you're betraying some trust if you identify what the real issue is. No, we can identify what it is. Now, the garrisons themselves is a classification for terrorism. You know? If the garrisons belong to both parties and both parties govern Jamaica, then Jamaica is being governed under terrorist rule because people are living in fear. That is not something you need to take a statistics on. Ask the Planning Institute of Jamaica to give you a report on. It is obvious. Whether you want to call it perception or reality, there are persons in the morgue. Now, with that being said, the only way you can address it, you'll have to go to the root of the problem, and you cannot be afraid.
And I've always,
I'd like to answer the question you asked about whether or not it is politically feasible to address the problem, you know, forcefully in Jamaica, the criminal crime problem.
Right.
And I believe Dr. Ivy, in part, hit the nail on the head. So I'll give you a couple examples quickly. But before I even get to that, let me just disagree with him that there are no statesmen in Jamaica. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. And the example he raised about Sandford in Erskine, whatever, in Barbados, we had a recent example of that in Jamaica with Peter Phillips. Right now, the Jamaican economy is riding on a wave that was started by Peter Phillips. He took serious political beating for it, but it set the country on a path that 8 years after, of course, I can't give it to him 8 years after because the new regime could have come in and dismantled it and changed it up and so on and so forth. So the new regime own what it is now. But the bottom line is that Peter Phillips acted.
So you're giving him and taking it back?
No. I'm saying Peter Phillips, out of acting as a statesman,
Yes.
created the economic platform that is resulting in Jamaica having record low unemployment, record high tax collection, and all of that, showing economic growth that has always, eluded us, and all of that. We are Jamaican. The political and the economic performance of the country have been praised by multinational financial institutions world over. That is what is happening now. But that has to do with what Peter Phillips did coming into 2016. That was a statement he lost.
For the economy, where's the statesman action for crime?
No. I'm just simply saying, I don't know about Erskine doing anything for crime. It was economic he did too. So I'm just saying we have to be careful how we just want to throw the entire country under the bus. We have statesmen here also, and I'll just make example of him. But let me go to the point where I share your view. One of the problems that Jamaica has had since independence, and it's something that I am very proud of because we have this very vibrant democratic system that we have, regular change of, regime without, any contention and problem like what I saw in America a few years ago, all done because we have a very vibrant democratic system of a two-party political setup. But that has been at the root of a lot of the problem that we are having now. When the JLP and the PNP took over, in 1944, when you have universal adult suffrage and people start to vote, everybody could vote. All of a sudden, people who were there actively squatting on people's place, littering places, all the little small crime you can think about that were punished by the colonial masters before. The new setup between the JLP and the PNP start to trip over them one another to see who could be more lenient to the voting population now. That's a problem that Lee Kuan Yew did not have in Singapore. In Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew had almost a one-party state. Yes, there are other parties, but he had literally a one-party state. He didn't have to look over and back to see, who is going to exploit any move that in terms of law and order that will come and take it over from him. So he had a free reign almost as a one-party state to enact strong law enforcement. In our case, we compromised law enforcement because to do it would be making yourself unpopular amongst this, what we call the small man. I'll give you a quick example. A few years ago, we had a lot of kidnapping taking place in motor cars, primarily taxis, where people were being kidnapped almost weekly. And one of the big ideas that came out of that occurrence was that the reason why the taxis were able to kidnap so many people unnoticed was because of the heavy tints on the cars. If the cars were not so tinted, then people would see people are waving, people would see suspicious things going on in the car. And the police met and say, okay, that's a problem that's impeding our ability to police that development. And so they took a decision to remove the tint from the car, from the taxis. And yes, they went out. Morning, 1 morning, 2 morning, 3 morning, they take it off the thing. They go and they have these on the roadside. And after about 3, 4 morning, the people them said, no, you come down go too hard from small man. Come down too hard from small man. And they had to abandon the exercise. Because whenever you go to these small crimes, you are now seen, and when you enforce them, you are now seen as being too draconian and the small man. The final point I'll make to that, because I've heard it raised before, when Andrew Holness, coming into the 2016 election, where he decided that I am not going to continue with this kind of, inactive approach to crime. I'm going to make it part of my platform because I am now getting upset. So he was in opposition, and that's when he promised that I'm going to tackle crime in a very serious way. And that's when he said, I'm going to do so well that you can go to your bed, with your windows open. Because for the first time, one of the leaders in Jamaica decided that they're going to use. I never noticed it. That was the first time, to be honest with you. But he went out on a limb. When he did it, the same Peter Phillips that I'm praising for the economic move on which we are riding now, came back and said, there is an unwritten rule between the two political parties. It is in the newspaper for everybody to see. There's an unwritten rule between the two political parties, the GLP and the PNP, that they would not put crime on the table. And Andrew Holness come and put it on the table. Now, that to me sounds like a conspiracy between two political parties over all these years not to compete on a matter that is of such grave concern to the country. And when I say that the strategic move to tackling crime and violence in the country must be a change in that mindset. That is the mindset I'm talking about, where we believe we can tackle small crimes because it will set small people who vote and them larger vote, it will set them against us. That is what is tying our hands behind us.
So you are implying that it is politics that is blocking the government from taking aggressive action against the
I'm saying that in Jamaica, because the small man makes up the biggest voting bloc, and they are the ones who are most likely to commit crime that is there for everybody to see. I'm not saying big man don't commit crime. They commit crime, but you don't see them. They are the white-collar crime people and so on and so forth. But the crime that you're thinking about now, where people can drive fast, or people can park out of position, or jaywalking, the little crime that everybody can see, that the more advanced countries that are doing well with crime, they know that they need to tackle crime from the bottom up. They need to build a culture of law and order, which means that enforcement, you're going to enforce crime.
But Ronnie, as the host of the platform, Ronnie,
because they're fearful of the backlash that will come if they were to become heavy-handed on crime. It caused the politicians to retreat from crime, not wanting to come across that way.
Go ahead, Lion. You're saying something.
Ronnie, no, I'm saying I'm listening to the lengthy delivery a while ago that our host just made a while ago. Right? He sounds like a host, and don't get me wrong. Here's the situation. Let us be honest. We don't just want to just come and just do a talk shop. Persons who are in the chat are looking at this eventually, are even looking at it now. Expect to hear persons who are honest enough to be critical enough in order to find a solution. And if we can't find a solution, that means we are part of the problem. Now, as far as Singapore is concerned, the thing is this, once somebody of significance goes to prison, you are sending a message that is unequivocal. Do not try to entertain the thought that it's just a few big people involved with crime. It cannot be systemic if that is the case. It is systemic because it is everywhere. It is in every ministry. Do not blind ourselves to this and be so dishonest to the generation that is right at our feet and depending on us to make the right decisions. We must be honest. And as far as the politics is concerned, and let us be clear, partisan politics is partisan politics. We're not just talking about getting rid of politics. That's impossible. That's a governance of a people. We're not talking about getting rid of the parliament per se. That's a building or it's just an institution. We are talking about the persons who have inherited and magnified a system that is enhancing a slavery upon these people, that is causing a blood sacrifice continually, and it must be stemmed. Whatever, I listened to you a while ago, Ronnie, right? And I was glad that I listened to the end, and I was still online, even the internet was giving some problem. Because you know what you said? You admit that there is crime, and you admit that there is a collusion between the two parties. And you admit that in order to find the solution, it cannot be addressed in that atmosphere. It has to rise above that. They will never produce the answer. They are benefiting. Can that be seen? Is it that difficult? I yield.
And I would argue as well that in the points that have been made in terms of the apparent understanding between the parties as it relates to crime, it goes to the earlier point that I made, that the job one, there's been an abdication of job one by the government, successive administrations over the years. And that's why we are having this problem. And further to that, if we accept again that crime is a multi-dimensional phenomenon, then it therefore means that you have to take the different components and address them in a systematic way. You have to take the different components, the institutions, the organizations, the security forces, the social dimension, the social architecture, the social determinants of crime. All of those things have to be taken on board in an holistic fashion. That's how we're going to solve it. That's how we're going to tackle it. And there has to be the will. And there's a missing ingredient in all of this. Citizens. Citizens in a democracy, citizens have a critical role to play in terms of demanding from their governments what it is that they put them in office to do. But you see, again, we cannot divorce this thing from the systemic dimension of it, you know. It is not just by accident or because they are fools why people are on top of bus stops and hanging off of vehicles on these political campaigns, you know. The system keeps them that way so that they serve as pawns for the perpetuation of the very system as it is over time, and it continues and perpetuates. We need certain systemic issues in the Jamaican society have to be dismantled before we can see our way forward.
Point well taken. So I wanted to ask a question. So is it because of the lacking resource why these laws around this time, the political campaign and all that, why they're not doing anything about those people obviously breaking laws?
Resources?
Yes. Why are it's just the whole game of politics that is allowed in during the season? What is going on with that?
I just want to answer this, and it is something that was there, and I'm just alluding to it. I'm not here to bash the security forces. There was a video of a police jeep loaded up pickup truck. You don't have jeeps anymore, like in my days when I was a boy, and there are Land Rover jeeps also. There was a police pickup truck loaded with people clad in their party colors. So you get the impression that the system, the security forces are in awe, intimidated by the politicians, or I'm not so sure what it is. But what you see is what we saw.
Terrorism.
It's
terrorism.
Why do you think those laws are being broken, sir, and the security force not doing anything about it?
Well, part of it is what the question alluded to, which is resources. Jamaica is still a very poor country. I think the last
Resources
time,
running for on the political campaign where people are hanging off buses and those things.
I'm saying they lack resources, largely because of the correct point you made earlier that law enforcement has not been prioritized, and so they have not gotten the requisite level of resource to fight crime at the level at which it is now. I tell you, if you think about it, we had more police in the 1980s than we have now, at almost a third of the murders. We had more police in the 1980s than we have now in 2024. So you can just think about that. One of the problems, for example, one of the problems still on the resources thing, where we are trying state of emergency for 14 years, try a little thing. We do not have enough manpower and technology to implement the state of emergency effectively across the length and breadth of this small country. So what do? Because we don't have enough resource. We have it in a Clarendon sometime, we have it in a Montego Bay sometime, we have it in a Westmoreland sometime. And so when you have it in a Westmoreland, people then go down to Montego Bay, and we have Montego, they run go to Clarendon, and so on and so forth. It doesn't make any sense. If you had enough resource, there will be nowhere for you to run to. So that in itself make the state of emergency, when it is implemented, ineffective. So resource is a big problem. I tell you, you have these busy political activity going around where poor people hang out on buses, they call body protruding, whatever it is. Anyhow, some police within the culture that we exist in right now was to pull over a bus and ticket everybody and who have them body protruding, and then some coming from client because they're coming to a conference maybe and so on and so forth. The police would be the laughing stock of it because they don't have enough police to effectively.
Is it laughing stock, or they would get transferred to OIO?
They would become
Great
the
question. Great question. I like that.
Well, I don't know about it being transferred, but I'm not taking that out. I'm not taking that out of the equation. I don't have any reason to believe they wouldn't, because I've seen in my lifetime where police were penalized for taking certain action in Jamaica because it went against the grain. It is not they were not penalized just because they impacted negatively some politically aligned people. Sometimes people are not aligned, but them just wealthy, them just rich. Who tell you to go to man yard to go do that? Because so we have that in Jamaica.
Yes, but the example that we cited, man, the example of the campaign.
Yeah, what I want to ask, what I want you guys to
I'm saying the amount of buses that people would be behaving like that. For it to appear as if you're not being, partisan, or you're not, being selective in how you apply the thing. That becomes a problem because it cannot be effectively policed. We are short of police. The first thing the man on the bus will tell you, say, look at the amount of people who murder people around the corner every night and every day and so on. And at this you come and pressure me about. That is a general response. I say a taxi man said that to a police the other day, and the police beat him up and take him out and care. Because that's a culture.
A bus, what you call it, campaign bus, motorcade, 300 people going into Kingston to whatever reason, and whatever political party. 300 people heading in and 7 bus, people hanging out. What 4 police in Clarendon that having a roadblock can do about it, Dr. Ivy?
Mr. Sorrell, hold on. May I say a word? Hold a second.
Yes.
Mr. Reckitt and I have been quite quiet, as if you're not a part of the discussion, okay? You asked the question, and Mr. Lang Dr. Ivy and Ronnie commented on it. Mr. Rattigan, I didn't get a chance. I don't know Mr. Rattigan want to comment, but I want to comment because that has to do with policing, and that's what I am here to address, the crime.
Okay.
That question, I think, was the second question, the political will. Could you submit that question to me so I can give you a response?
Which was that question again? Is it politically feasible for the?
I think that's yeah. Can you repeat it?
Is it politically feasible for the government to come down hard on crime in Jamaica? Was that it?
Yes.
Okay.
It was not. Okay, let me speak carefully. To the best of my knowledge, right? Ronnie made reference to the 80s, and that's a strong point for me in terms of crime management, where there were only 400 or so. That's still too much, right? But in comparison to what we have now, for 9 years, there were only 400 and something annual murders, right? So from the 90s to now, my observation is that it is not politically feasible for either GLP or the PNP to come down hard on crime, whatever the reasons, right? Ronnie also stated that this current government or prime minister apparently wanted to do so and attempted to do so. I can't comment on the progress or lack thereof, but I will tell you this. I'm a policeman at heart, okay? My drill instructor told me, once a police, always a police. And I've done other things in my life, and I'm still a JCF man. The police force, right, has a lot of potential. But even this current commissioner, no matter what we're trying to say, he has been given basket to carry water. Whether it's the GLP or the PNP, they have not effectively provided the JCF with the resources or the culture to really effectively enforce the law in Jamaica. Dr. Ivy gave this example about police vehicle carrying people in colors to vote or something like that. That is benign. When I was a policeman, policemen are being assigned to special duties all day on election day. I didn't know what their duties were. To go from polling station to polling station to collect ballot boxes as if they're going to turn them in and go and destroy them.
What?
So when you're talking about policing, you got to understand the reality of what happens in Jamaica. I don't know what's going on now. I know things have improved. But I'm trying to say to you, just in the narrow lane of policing, okay, it is the duty of the state to protect the people. So when we're having this discussion, we've got to be fair and honest. This is not a GLP problem or a PNP problem. It is a Jamaica problem. And we all got to be talking with one voice. We're not supposed to be we can disagree in approach and certain ideas. But it's a serious national problem that we have to address. So yes, the answer to the question, it is not politically feasible because I have evidence, facts. I know firsthand that both the GLP and the PNP play politics with crime. It has to stop.
Go ahead, Sir Rattigan. You want to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Brown that there is an issue there in terms of the political feasibility to address the crime issue. No, here's where I'm going to take it. I want to take it to an institution called Integrity Commission, right? That institution came into being in 2017. The law was passed in 2017, and the institution became effective 2018. And we know exactly what it's all about, right? It's about holding people accountable for corruption and other matters. And what has happened since? There was much ballyhoo about it when it was brought into being by the Prime Minister and others. And now what we see is a movement afoot to destroy the very institution that was created to address corruption. Let me give you an example. The Speaker of the House, former Speaker of the House, Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, resigned under a cloud caused by an investigation and the tabling of a report. And to date, the DPP cannot tell me if there is The DPP cannot tell me if there is legal action against the former speaker. And she said that to me in writing. Now, the DPP under the Constitution and under the Integrity Commission Act of 2017 is the chief prosecutor in Jamaica. She's supposed to know everything that's going on. She's in London right now, observing the trial or the appeal of Vibes and others. But that's a failure. That's a fail on the part of the system. Then you have former minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Leslie Campbell, same thing. Then you have Dr. Grace McLean, former acting permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education, where they tried to get her on a surcharge action, an administrative action, and the government waited beyond the statutory limitation period. And she was allowed to walk free on the surcharge, although they still have some charges that they can bring against her. So I keep coming back to what Lion said. You know, everywhere you look, you see a system failure. Now, Ronnie had said that he made the point that the JCF, I have it right here. So the JCF is basically under-resourced, not given enough resources. I don't know what country Ronnie is living in, because every time I turn on it, I listen to Jamaica News, I hear the Minister of National Security and the Prime Minister talking about that they have spent more money to address this issue than any other administration. They said we spend tons and tons of money, and in fact, they said the opposite. They say it's well-resourced. And the Minister of National Security, he went even further. He said, look, we have some of the best policemen in this hemisphere. And he said it on several occasions. The most recent being, I think, last month, or maybe it was early this month. Last month, I think, when they graduated some people from the college. So I'm confused. You know, if the idea is that you have all of these resources, and one of the things that we're not talking about is Plan Secure Jamaica, and I need people to read that, because they keep asking about a crime plan. A crime plan is included in Plan Secure Jamaica. In fact, Jamaica doesn't need another crime plan. There have been about 6 crime plans on the shelves right now, and if you read the first one, including the Wolf Report, and if you read one of them, you've read all of them, because they mirror each other. Every single one of them basically said the same thing. They identify the crime issues and say, here's what you need to do, right? And now we come up with something called Plan Secure Jamaica, where now it's a national security plan. It's protecting the borders, protecting this, protecting that. And what have we seen? Abject failure. Why? Because one of the things, and I said it the last time on the program, we don't have adequate leadership. We don't. Look at the Ministry of National Security. The Minister of National Security, what's his qualification? Medical doctor, no law enforcement experience. The junior minister, the former athlete, her name escapes me now. What's her name? She came over from the Ministry of Health. Cuthbert Flynn. Right. She has 0 law enforcement experience. Look at the permanent secretary. She came over from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. 0 law enforcement experience. Look at the police commissioner. 0 law enforcement, as far as I'm concerned, 0 law enforcement experience. No. Mama used to tell me, say, self-praise is no recommendation. But me have to recommend myself now. Take all 4 of them, and count them years of law enforcement experience. And me surpass them by far. By far. And not only me, there's somebody there in the JCF called Rowan James. Him surpass all of them by far. There are qualified people in the JCF, but they're not being given opportunity. Right? So how can you expect results in terms of the crime issue when you have people there who don't know what they're doing? They don't know what they're doing. By the way, and let me just throw this out for David. In 2015, the last time the PNP, and I'm not making an argument for them, I'm just looking at the statistics. 2015, the murder rate was 1,208. 2016, the Prime Minister started talking about Plan Secure Jamaica and started spending money. In fact, the Minister of National Security proclaimed that he's spending 1.2 billion US dollars on doing what? Transforming the JCF and the Ministry of National Security. Where is that transformation? Dr. Ivy talked about the consensus monitoring on crime. I'm very familiar with that, and Mr. Distant and his program. And you're right, Dr. Ivy. Every time you hear them talk, they talk about missing benchmarks, right? So 1,208, 2015, and you come in and this is why I'm so passionate about this. 1,208, and you coming up and you say, I'm going to spend 1.2 billion from fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 2023. And you can't get it down to where you get it, where it was handed over to you. Worse yet, and this is the point that's going to drive the nail into the coffin. We're worried now about 0.01% of the crime committed in Jamaica against tourists. Meanwhile, upwards of 1,350 of us were slaughtered last year. Where is the outcry? The American government put a little travel advisory upon them, and they didn't increase it. It was always a 3. It was a 3 since March of 2022. And now we see where the ambassador now, she had a meeting today over at State Department trying to convince them to amend it. We see where the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade went to the ambassador over at the U.S. Embassy trying to get them to change it. And we see all of these things. Them even blame us. Them call us. We are now known as the Dirty 30. The 30 people who caused the State Department to enhance the travel advisory. But I'm saying, where is that outcry for the 13 plus 100, the 1,300, whatever people who died last year in Jamaica? We are killing ourselves about 0.01 of the crime committed in Jamaica against tourists. We killing up ourselves. Where is the outcry for our people?
I want to ask you a question.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Will, he made mention of me in his presentation, so I'd like to defend myself.
I withdraw. So you can go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
all right, let me answer this though. Dr. Paul Ivy, I'm going to give you a minute, Sir Ron. Dr. Paul Ivy allude to the fact that there's many contributing factors to the crime in Jamaica. And I know that you had applied, Mr. Rattigan, on a few occasions to become the commissioner of police. I heard how passionate you are about the crime situation in Jamaica. What difference would you, if given the opportunity today to become the commissioner of police, can you change the crime situation, given the fact that there's many layers, as Dr. Paul Ivy had said earlier?
Look, the first thing within the organization is you have to be concerned about your people, right? You have to have qualified people. You have to have leaders. If you don't have that, you could have the best system possible, and it is going to fail. You need leaders, and we don't have leaders. I just laid out for you the Ministry of National Security, the people that they call leaders over there. They're not leaders. Okay. They have no clue as to what's going on. So the very first thing, first of all, one person, it's going to be difficult. It's like turning a battleship versus turning a speedboat. It's going to be difficult. So what would happen is that I wouldn't come by myself. I have a team of people that I know across the globe, right? And these people, serious people, you're talking about crime fighters, serious people with some outstanding contacts. I mean, they know. There's a guy right now, and I don't want to call his name, but this guy is a genius when it comes to developing sources and protecting sources, setting up databases for sources. He's been trained by the best in the world. And this guy was going to come with me to Jamaica. That's the type of people I would take. And they also have people in Jamaica who can do this work, Don't get me wrong. They have people in Jamaica. But the thing about it that I think would make it work is because nobody don't know the people when me I bring come. So them can't, Them can't tell them this and tell them where to look and tell them what not where to look, because them people are crime fighters. They're like bloodhounds. Once them latch on the scent on, that's it. And it's not just, some of them are Jamaicans, some of them come from the Middle East, some of them come from North America, some of them come from Europe, right? So when you ask the question as to if I were the police commissioner, what would I have done? I sat down one time, I mentioned it the last time, I was giving a speech, and I have a thing here, 41 things that could have been done, right? But the first thing that you have to do is you have to, first of all, identify and put the right people in the right position and take care of your people. In Jamaica, what I find, a couple of things I wrong with the national security and the JCF. One of them is that we have square pegs in round holes. We have people who don't fit, and we keep trying to chew on them into it. And for whatever reason, they don't realize that this is never going to happen. And the Ministry of National Security is one of the key ministry, because they said that, look, we're losing billions of dollars a year because of the crime issue. And they said, okay, talk about prioritizing the crime issue. We are going to put money in this thing, and we're going to put people in there, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And then all you hear is just this, just talk. Remember the number, 1,208 in 2016. We are nowhere near that, even today.
I want to come in on that global figure that has been mentioned, because you see, we run the danger of...
Guys, remember we have 21 minutes to wrap up. So go ahead, Dr. Paul Ivy. And
I think that number that we're looking at in terms of the figure for 2023, and also in any year when we call out the number of persons that have died, I think it is important that we disaggregate the numbers, because we have a significant number of murders coming from domestic situations where you cannot have law enforcement in people's back pocket when they're inside their houses and have conflicts, and they can't solve these conflicts peacefully, and a murder has occurred. And that is part of the social dimension that we need to address. The conflict resolution, how we relate to each other as citizens and as Jamaicans relating to each other. So you see, when we look at the ingredients making up the numbers that we're looking at, I think it is important for us to disaggregate the gangs who are involved in crime as a business versus these that are coming from the domestic scenario.
But Dr. Ivy, let me just inform you of this. The police have done that. If you call them and you ask them for statistics, as I've done, they'll tell you about the numbers that they attribute to suicide, the numbers that they attribute to self-defense, the numbers they attribute to gangs, the numbers they attribute to the social dimension,
yes, the JCF has done that, but the point I was making was that when you say 1,300 murders in terms of Jamaicans that have died, but the 0.1% tourists, it clouds the matter in that context. So that is a specific point I'm making, that we can't just look at the global figure and say this number of Jamaicans and this handful of tourists, when it is not random killings that are happening with a significant number.
But here's the point I'm driving. The point I'm driving at is this, is that you cannot, and by the way, any life lost is a tragedy,
but sure,
including lives of tourists.
Yes.
But what I'm talking about now is the attention that we put to it, right? And I'm saying, if you know that, okay, there are problems, domestic problems, and they result in a certain amount of crimes, there are things that you can do. The question is the JCF doing those things? And the answer is no.
And I'm arguing that it cannot necessarily be the JCF. You are talking now about social workers, conflict resolution experts, and so forth for those kinds of murders. The JCF is involving criminal enterprises, organized crime. That's
so what you do. But here's the thing, Dr. Ivy. Dr. Ivy, a lot of times when you see a domestic situation, it's not the first instance on somebody that, it's over a period of time. Somebody saw what was going on. Somebody knew. And so what I'm saying is that the same people that you're talking about, the sociologists, the social workers, this and that, you can include them within the national security architecture, right? And you can have it so that these people, when these things happen, people are aware of it, and you can have the social workers go out and do it. $1.2 billion, that can go a long way. The question is it going the way that it should go? And I dare say, no, it's not.
My last point on this is a point I had made earlier. The matter of effective institutions and institutions operating optimally, and we have had a failure in that regard of key institutions.
That time, give somebody else a chance to weigh in on this. I don't know.
I like to weigh in on it.
I want you to respond quickly to Mr. Will point of mentioning me, because I have to defend myself. None of the lawyer them not defend me. So point one. This is about the second time Ratty is making reference to this $1.2 billion. I'm saying, notwithstanding that $1.2 billion, which we welcome, because a long time no money have been really spent on the security force. But if we agree that the police force since independence has been neglected, there have been a systematic neglect around the police force, because it was always seen as the last remaining vestige of the colonial days. So we deal with the police force almost embarrassingly, like we never really want, because we don't want to carry it on, because that was how the colonial people were, harassing and the poor little our ancestors. I have been privy to going into a number of police stations over many years, seeing the rotting wooden floors, leaking roof, no proper place for the police them to sleep, just a ratness. And to me, that kind of neglect was willful. And that has happened over many, many, many years. So I find it disingenuous of Ratty to be coming here today to say $1.1 million or $1.2 million was spent over the last 2 years. And you see how it started to bring down crime after 60 years of neglect. That is disingenuous. We have to give the thing, what we need to have now is that this is not a one drop in the bucket, but they'll have a consistent approach to resourcing the police. And it's going to take years to turn it around.
No, run it. You have to be fair. You have to be fair and just. You just accused me of saying that $1.2 billion in 2 years. That's not true. It's $1.2 billion in 8 years.
Okay, so that make it worse. I thought it was because the effect of it would be far greater if it was over just 2 years. So that make your point even worse. That the systematic neglect that the police force has been subject to. I've had people break into my house and thief me electronic equipment, several cameras and amplifiers and things. And when I discover where the equipment were and people, and I went to the police station, them look at me and tell me, say, boy, one car at the station.
Ronnie, you're making my point. There is corruption.
Let me finish. I listen to you. Let me finish.
No, you didn't listen carefully. You did not listen carefully.
This is what you said. You said that with the 1.2 billion, they have not been able to bring down the crime, the murder rate. That's what you said. And I'm just simply saying that over 60 years of neglect, the little 1.2 billion that went into the police over the last 8 years, according to you, would not be enough to generate the kind of results that we are talking about. That is point number one. So it is disingenuous to expect that to happen. Point number two.
I can't make you get away with this.
I'm going to finish. You can go the boss and listen to you.
You will not finish.
Let me finish.
No, wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Oh my God, you will a boss.
No.
I did not interrupt you.
You cannot level that accusation at me about I'm disingenuous. I won't allow you to do that. Similarly, the last time we were here, you know what you said? You said that our
finish your argument.
No, you will not finish. No, you will not finish. You said to me the last time when we were here, you said, No, wait a minute. The last time, no, I will not yield. You know what you said the last time? This is very typical of you. The last time you said, on a protest, on a waste of time, and it's a waste of time, right? ask the government if it was a waste of time. Go ask the government. Similarly, go and ask Dr. Chang what he has said about the $1.2 billion and the resources that they provide. He's saying the complete opposite of what you're saying.
Okay. So can I continue now? Yes. So I'll continue. The next point he made that I've similarly found to be disingenuous. The police force is headed up at the level of policy in the cabinet, a person called the Minister of National Security. I don't see the need for the Minister of National Security as needing to have military or law enforcement background. As a matter of fact, to me, it is better that he doesn't have it because he's operating at the level of policy. If it is run properly, he will not be intervening or interfering with the operations of the police. Two, the permanent secretary. There's no need for the permanent secretary. But I think Ratty is making that point because he wants to do this. He added up all of these people to show that when you put his experience as a law enforcement man, it exceeds Minister of National Security, more than the permanent. It's not necessary to make those comparisons, my brother. They're not law enforcement personnel.
Isn't that a fact?
Let me finish, man. I did not interrupt
That take too long, man.
You took quite a long time, and I'm saying your point. You can't make this point and then go unattended.
Too long, man.
You cannot make this point and then go unattended.
Wrap it up in 1 minute.
So it is very important that we keep it at a level. What I came for this evening has not happened. I came for us to sit down. I don't come to get no lecture from Ratty as to what is happening in Jamaica. We don't know what's happening in Jamaica. We want to hear what can we do about what is happening in Jamaica. So this has been a wasted exercise of sitting down and hear the same thing that you said last week about all of these things here. We all know.
All right.
There's no shortage of it.
Dennis.
Yeah.
You see when you and Isaac said it best. He said sometimes people are dunces to what they don't know. You see, when you don't know law enforcement and you try to talk law enforcement with somebody who's inexperienced, who has probably no experience about law enforcement, you're right. It's a wasted exercise. Because I sat here and I talked to him about the Integrity Commission, right? I talked to him about leadership, right? I talked to him about getting the right people in the right position. If you notice, when he came out and we asked him about corruption, what did he say? Him no have no answer. No answer. So he's right. For him, it's a wasted time. It's wasted time because he doesn't understand law enforcement. And so when he's talking about law enforcement, he needs to go and educate himself. I've given him two resources: Plan Secure Jamaica and the Consensus on Crime. And I said that to him the last time, and he didn't listen. He didn't do his homework. He needs to go read those two documents, just two. And then we can have an intelligent discussion about law enforcement. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Attorney David want to weigh in on this.
I wanted to weigh in on a particular point, but I will allow Mr. Lyon to speak also because I haven't heard from him for a while. Would you like to comment, Mr. Lyon?
You know, I'm just here saying to myself, you know, I can see the political system in Jamaica is a bipartisan cult. And I'll tell you why I say that. The intelligentsia in Jamaica is implicated in this corruption. You know why? When they speak, they cannot make a point. They will tell you stories and repeat novels and so intellectual, but in the defense of a party line that they have been so ingrainedly indoctrinated in, they cannot think themselves out of a wet paper bag. And I have listened to many in the public, both politicians, people in the mainstream media, people who are supposed to be professionals. They are speaking, and thank God most of the persons that they're speaking in front of do not understand a word they are saying. because they're not saying anything. They will speak for filibustering for 3 hours and don't have a solution. But they will degrade and denigrate because that's a cult behavior. Once you come against the status quo, they want to vilify you. They're not talking about the message, They're going after the messenger. It's a cult behavior. And that's what Jamaica has been subjected to over and over again. Everybody know what garrison politics represent. The 2 leaders of the political parties have a garrison, and a major garrison too. The Minister of National Security. Huh?
You have 30 seconds to wrap up because we're
running out of time. The Ministry of National Security has a garrison also. Are you fooling yourselves? Do you think you can explain yourself from the guilt that you now become a part of by remaining silent and boring your head in the sand with your ass sticking out, thinking that the problem is going to go away? Do you think you can tell the next generation that? We have to realize that in order to come with a solution, we must identify the problem squarely and think as men.
Thank you very much. Sir, Attorney
Yeah, I just want to jump into the discussion that Mr. Rattigan and Dr. Ivy had. I hear of a recent announcement about a new ministry, something like, we spoke about the last time, Dr. Ivy, Ministry of Peace and Human Development, something like that. I think it's in accord with your thinking, Dr. Ivy, that you need to address the Jamaican sociological construct in order to, prevent some of these things from happening. And that is also in accord with what Mr. Rattigan is saying, right? Now, I understand that the global numbers, if you don't disaggregate it, it can tell an erroneous message. But I might be wrong. I submit to the panelists that most of the murders that are occurring in Jamaica are the result of these kind of crime that police can reduce from the gangs and from all sort of lawlessness, right? Gun violence, I know that, right? So I echo what Mr. Rattigan is saying. Another thing at a deeper level, and forgive me if I offend anybody because we're all black people on this panel, right? When Mr. Rattigan is saying about the response to this travel advisory as it relates to tourists, come on, let us be real. Chances are this is geopolitics and it has nothing to do with the real murders in Jamaica, right? So this, I almost said the State Department, but Jamaica's Foreign Ministry, Affairs Ministry, need to be wading through this in a different manner, in a more sophisticated manner. No, the reality is that Jamaicans apparently don't love Jamaicans. Like black people don't love black people. Why must we be killing ourselves and accept that these astronomical numbers every year? It's not significant. Something is wrong. Recently, I read that the Prime Minister was trying to say to the Jamaican people that they need to take the murders that are occurring in Jamaica more seriously. It's not just a localized, street gang problems. It's a problem that can cause the state to collapse. So if we're at this point in 2024, and I am saying, not promoting anybody's partisan political argument, because I know that Mr. Rattigan mentioned 2015, thereabouts, and I think that's when the government changed. I don't think he 16, right? He was in defense of Mr. Rattigan. I would say he wasn't being partisan political. He was just talking the facts, right? Because it is true, the murders keep increasing. So the government has to look at that. They have to do something. Similarly, in 2013, Mr. Bunting was the Minister of National Security, and he made a statement about Jamaica needs divine intervention. So if Jamaica needed divine intervention then, what about now, right? So I conclude this by saying, what was going on in the 80s that Ronnie was referring to? We had social problems, right? We had just a political upheaval in 1980 specifically. So why were the murders for those 9 years just 400, and why now we have 1,500, 1,300? Something is wrong. And I think that everything that everybody said tonight, right, is of substance. I don't think it's a waste of time, Ronnie. I know that there's a thing going on between you and Rattigan, but I think when we review it, we are saying something. We can't solve the problem here in this conversation, right? Or we are putting out things that the public, the people watching, they're listening to us, They are listening. We have to come together. And I end by saying, Ryan, put some pressure on Parliament, because Parliament is a problem.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. We are almost out of time. But what I'd like to do, I just want to give each of you guys, a minute and a half to wrap up, because we don't want to go past the 2 hours mark, which we are almost there. I must say, this is not the end of Retigan. This is not the end of Rani. This is not the end of Dr. Ivy. This is not the end of Lion. And this is not the end of David Brown. We're going to do this all over again, but we have to end this tonight. And I'm going to start with Dr. Paul Ivy giving us his final remark.
Thank you, sir. The sociologists will tell you that in a society, everything is connected to each other thing. And I've argued that we have a multi-dimensional problem in our crime situation. And we have to disaggregate the component parts and address each of them so that collectively the synergistic effect will be realized. The second point is institutions. The point was made about the under-resourcing of the JCF. Other institutions have also been under-resourced. The courts don't even have reporters to capture the notes of evidence when they are given in court cases. So this all goes back to effective governance. And in the absence of effective governance, things fall apart. The center cannot hold.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Lyon.
Well, I go before Lion. I forgot to pick up my youth then. Let me just go before Lion up, please. Yeah, truth and reconciliation. The Prime Minister mentioned this peace and development ministry, this new ministry he's thinking about forming. Problem with that is, and he mentioned the Truth and Reconciliation Commission out of South Africa. Now, I lived in South Africa. I'm very familiar with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And one of the things that I think it won't work if you have the Truth and Reconciliation, because now you're going to ask the politicians to come forward and confess their sins. So it won't happen. The under-resourcing, I'm confused because the Minister of National Security is saying that they have the money. In fact, if you recall, the Senator Webby, a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago, he complained that they were not spending the money that they had asked for, because I think 3 quarters into the year they had spent like a quarter of the budget, and he raised it and said, how come you guys say you don't have any money? And in fact, they were giving them an enhancement on top of that. So the idea that it's under-resourced goes back to leadership. And what I'm saying to you is this: when you can take a chance with Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and all those, you cannot take a chance with Minister of National Security, because when mistakes are made over there, people die. And I'll leave you with that. Take care.
I think it's fair for you to spend the 1 minute that Ronnie put his final remarks in. Ronnie, your time. I think it's fair for you.
I use the time to put my remark about a waste of time in context. I'm a strategist. That's my trade. And we set objective for whatever we're doing. We had a clear objective this evening. I didn't come here to regurgitate what is happening in Jamaica. We all know that. I've been a part of this exercise 3 times now. We are in here talking about this is wrong and that is wrong and that is wrong and that is wrong. What I expected of this exercise, and to the extent that it didn't happen, it becomes a total disappointment for me. That we are here to define the problem in a way that we can come up with solutions. And that did not happen. I'm not going to participate in another exercise to come and talk about what is wrong with Jamaica. We know what is wrong with Jamaica, and we have known for a long, long time. I am tired of that now. I need to hear what we can do to solve the problem in Jamaica within the context of our legal framework and also within the context of our sovereignty. That's it.
Thank you very much. Lion.
You
have a minute.
This cult behavior have to go. I can see that people refuse to think honestly. They have sacrificed honesty on the expediency altar just to get by and to be counted as if they're intellectuals, but the people are dying and their blood is wasting. It is not a time for us to be thinking about if the carburetor is good, if the gas pump is good, or the entire vehicle is corrupt. Stop talking about changing the carburetors and the muffler and the spark plug, if that is right. That is, although it sounds constructive because you sound like a mechanic, you're talking BS because you need to get a different vehicle. That one pop down. And if you can't think like that, then you're subjected to cultism, which Jamaica can have no part of if it wants a better future.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Attorney Brown.
I hope I can make my closing remarks within the allocated time. I've heard a lot and I've been informed. I understand zealous advocacy, right, which I witnessed between Dr. Mr. Attorney Rattigan and Mr. Sutherland, right? And eventually we will distill the information that has been imparted here. I understand law enforcement, in particular Jamaican law enforcement, right? So I know that what has been said here is of worth. However, I try to confine myself just within the crime lane. That's why in my own remarks, I said, hopefully I can have another discussion with one of Jamaica's best crime fighters, right? Regarding what can be done. Now, when I was a police officer, one thing is missing in this discussion, right? Is God, right? When you mention God, people go sort of way. But it was God who carried me through the JCF, protected me, not just me, many colleagues. And Jamaica has a spiritual ethos, which we are not really, we don't need to discuss it here, but we must be aware of it. So Mr. Bunting was correct. He was onto something. So it's not about your particular faith, right? It's about understanding that there's something out there beyond us that can help us to come together as a nation. America is an older nation. We welcome their friendship as an ally, right? You know, the mutuality of it, and I respect the predicate that Ronnie is battling for, Jamaica's sovereignty, right? America in times gone by, they had problems with corruption in Chicago, in New York. But what Mr. Rattigan is saying, the leadership. We need leadership in Jamaica to lead the people to reach that point where things can be better. So in sum, I'm saying there's hope for Jamaica. We must not give up on Jamaica. That's my final remarks.
Well, thank you, guys. I mean, we did what we can do. We express ourselves, and I think that, you know, we have difference in opinion, but we have the same objectives to fix Jamaica. Thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to see you all on another show. Have a good night, you all.
Okay, good night.
Colleagues.